Okay, so we're going to start a new series of videos. There's not going to be many on this particular subject, but we're going to start a new series. We're going to look at the commissioners of all the major leagues in North America. We're going to start with Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball. Now, Rob Manfred will be standing down as MLB Commissioner in 2029. He may go sooner, but he's not renewing his contract past 2029. So in 4 years' time, Major League Baseball is going to have to vote on a replacement. However, Rob Manfred and his relationship with Major League Baseball predates his time as commissioner. He first worked with Major League Baseball during the CBA negotiations between the league and the League Players Association in 1987 as a lawyer. So he was involved then. That's 2 years before I was born, so we're going back a long time here. In 94-95, when the players went on strike, the Major League Baseball players' strike, which wiped out the World Series, he was brought in by Major League Baseball as outside counsel for the owners. And this is pivotal because this ends up getting him a full-time role with Major League Baseball. So he joined the league full-time in 1998 as Executive Vice President for Economics and League Affairs. That's his job title. It's while he's in this role at the league that he helps negotiate the first drug testing policy alongside the MLB PA in 2002. He also, under this role, represented Major League Baseball during the CBA negotiations in 2002, when he also brings in this drugs policy, who helps negotiate, 2006 and 2011. In 2013, he was the guy charged by Major League Baseball to lead the investigation into the biogenesis scandal, which we can look at in a separate video. I don't know enough about the biogenesis scandal myself to make a video yet, but that is something to research for future times, and that is in a very important moment for Major League Baseball. That same year, he's also promoted from Executive Vice President of Economics and League Affairs to become the Chief Operating Officer for the league. So he's going up Major League Baseball's slippery slope, should we say, the greasy pole of management. Now, Bud Sieg was the commissioner. Bud Sieg basically promoted him. In 2014, Bud Sieg announces he's going to be retiring as commissioner, and he nominates Rob Manfred to be his successor. Now, Rob Manfred had to run off and go through an election process, and he is voted in by the league owners. He actually wins that election. He was not the only candidate, and he becomes commissioner full-time in 2015 in the January pre-season. 2015, he becomes commissioner, and as commissioner, there were rules brought in to speed up the play, and there's a lot of other things that happen in 2015, like they bring back in the World Baseball Classic, plays sped up. There's shot clocks brought in, pitching clocks brought in. So there's things done to make the play quicker and to improve the fan experience. And it's during the first few years he's in as commissioner that he's widely praised for rule changes the league brings in, the positivity around the league at the time, and the direction the league is heading. In 2018, his contract is extended until 2024, the first time. And again, in this period, he's been widely praised. Fans are quite happy with his role as commissioner, which is rare for a major league commissioner. He's getting a lot of positive praise from fans, players, owners, the league, the Players Association. Team executives have a good working relationship with him, so things are working well. And then, beginning of 2020, before the COVID lockdown, the first major scandal of his time in charge as commissioner hits. And since then, it's been a bit more difficult for Rob Manfred as Major League Baseball commissioner. The Houston Astros sign stealing scandal. Now, we've covered that in depth on the channel. We've done videos on it, and they're on the Major League Baseball playlist. But he himself was heavily criticised for the handling of the scandal, the investigation, and the punishments handed out to both the team and players involved. He was heavily criticised. In 2023, he did say he did get things wrong. He actually admitted a few years after the fact that the way the league handled it could have handled it better. Some of the punishments handed down were maybe too weak for some of the players. Some players got immunity for cooperating, and that was not his best decision as league commissioner. He admitted he made mistakes, and he was heavily criticised for the way he conducted himself during interviews and press conferences, and the whole situation was badly handled by the league. A few months after the sign stealing scandal breaks and that investigation commences and concludes, COVID happens, and it shuts down the league. And initially, obviously, every league around the world shuts down, every sport shuts down. But it's the return to play negotiations that become very, very fraught. And the relationship between the MLBPA, the Commissioner, and the league breaks down. The players aren't happy with what's been put on the table to resume the season. And it nearly led to a player strike. The relationship between the players and the league really starts to break down, which would have impacts a year or so later. They do return to play in 2020 in a truncated season, but the seeds are sown for the lockout that is to come. A year after COVID first hits, the 2021 All-Star Game is moved. Now, the league decides to move it from Atlanta to Denver because the state of Georgia is changing voting rules and voting law. And there's protest. Now, this is where politics and sport is a bit of a mess. Now, the Players Association is in favour, and the move was also endorsed by the then President Joe Biden. A lot of fans were critical of this, and it was a political minefield that the league gets involved in. They did move the All-Star Game as an act of protest of what the state of Georgia was doing in regards to voter legislation and voter rights and who can vote and who can't vote. Now, as I say, this is where politics and sport is a really, really dangerous mix. It did divide opinion. Now, some fans were in favour of the All-Star move of the game. A lot of fans weren't, and it was a very controversial moment where it was seen that the league was getting political. It did not go down well with a lot of people. And this is where you've got to try and keep that neutrality in regards to politics and not show political favour. In this case, the league stepped in and basically showed political favour to one party over the other. And in a two-party system in the US, that's a dangerous tightrope to tread. And fans were critical of that. And a lot of commentators were as well. Others were in favour, but it was very, very divisive in the game and potentially shouldn't have happened. Now, later on in 2021, we've covered this in depth, the 2021-2022 lockout. Again, very similar to the sign stealing scandal and the investigation there and the COVID return to play negotiations. Fans were heavily critical of how the league and the MLBPA conducted themselves, but they were especially critical of Rob Manfred and some of the way he conducted himself during press conferences and interviews and some of the statements he made. We have covered the lockout in depth on the channel. Again, the videos are up in the playlist. I want to try and keep this video as not too long, but make sure it's not a lengthy video because there's a lot here and I'm trying to cover as much as possible in a very short time frame. But fans were critical. It did delay the start of the 2022 season. But considering how other leagues have had many lockouts and player strikes, this was the first piece of labour unrest the league had had since he was last involved with a player strike or lockout in 94-95. It had been a very, very long time of labour peace within Major League Baseball, a league that has been truncated by lockouts and player strikes ad nauseum before he became commissioner. This was the first time there was a real breakdown in the relationship between the players and the league. And a lot of the seeds of the lockout was sown during the COVID lockdown, where the return to play negotiations were very, very tense. Neither side felt they were negotiating in good faith, and it dragged on to delay the start of the 2022 season. However, fast forward a couple of years, 2023, the World Baseball Classic returns, and it was the first since 2017. Obviously, the COVID pandemic had delayed a return of the World Baseball Classic, but TV viewership was very, very strong. TV viewership was higher than it had been in 2017, so views were up, and they were especially strong in Asia, which was really positive. The global TV audience was also up, which was positive. And considering some of the scandals and issues that had come since 2020, this was refreshing. However, the feel-good factor doesn't last because you have the Oakland Athletics relocation saga. Yes, the Athletics. Now, the situation with the Athletics and a couple of other teams right now is quite tense. Now, the Athletics are currently playing Sacramento. A lot of people, myself included, feel that the league has handled this whole situation very, very poorly. Now, some of it is on the Athletics ownership. Yes, in fact, a lot of it is. But it is also noticeable that a lot of fans are frustrated with the league. And it's not just because of the Athletics going through a relocation saga. Will they actually end up in Vegas? We'll get to Vegas in a minute. Because they're not the only team which has got stadium issues. Now, the reason why they leave Oakland is because the Coliseum was not a suitable, long-term, viable stadium to play baseball in. There's issues with the city and the county in Alameda County and Oakland City Council. And what's going to happen with Vegas? Are they ultimately going to end up in Las Vegas in a purpose-built brand new arena round the corner from T-Mobile and Allegiant Stadium, where the Raiders and the Golden Knights play, in a very a new development? There's issues about that. Sacramento, they're playing in a minor league ballpark. It's not a good look for the league. They can't even sell out opening night. So there are some issues with this, and it's a bad image for the league. Now, there's other issues going on with the Brewers. They're basically bankrupt. They have huge debts, and the future of the team and the team ownerships is up, in the air. The Chicago White Sox, they're not certain if they're going to get their new stadium built and who's going to fund it. The Tampa Bay Rays are technically homeless. Now, they're also playing out of a minor league ballpark. The Tropicana Field is, still missing a roof and is just not usable. Plus, their lease was up in 3 years anyway. So there's a few teams already that are having arena issues. Kansas City Royals, what's going to happen there? Are they going to stay in Missouri? Are they going to go to Kansas? Will they get a new stadium built? So before he retires in 2029, there are some franchises within the league that have stadium issues and potential ownership issues going forward. Now, that's something that needs to be considered, because he represents the league. He's there because the owners have hired him. Basically, he is their mouthpiece, but at the same time, there's a lot of issues that the commissioner deals with that he has to deal with publicly. The Athletics relocation saga has been damaging for the image of the league. One other thing that I actually didn't put in my notes was the new Fanatics jerseys last year, Jerseygate as I'll call it, where they were just terrible. And the reaction from fans with how bad the on-field product was, and also the product they buy in the club shops. The players were very critical of the equipment they are using, the uniforms, the Major League Baseball kits, basically, as we would call it here. The trousers, the shirt, the hats, things not fitting correctly, the quality of manufacture being poor. That was a very messy public episode for the league, because Nike subcontracts the manufacture to Fanatics using the same factory that's been used for generations making Major League Baseball apparel. But the quality of the product last season was diabolical. Absolutely shocking. Fans were heavily critical of the product they got in the club shop or online from Major League Baseball. The players were exceptionally critical, and it was a big PR nightmare. So that was something else that happened last year. And again, Rob Manfred is on the defensive, dealing with something that really should have been a smooth transition from one manufacturer to another. The design change was panned. A lot of fans weren't happy there. Now, he has stated at times since he's been commissioner his views on potential expansion of the league. We know Portland has been having meetings with Major League Baseball in recent months about a potential expansion team. When he was appointed back in 2015, he stated they were actively looking at new locations for Major League Baseball. Portland, Las Vegas, who hopefully will end up with the Athletics, Charlotte, Nashville, a return to Montreal. Many fans want the Expos back, and Vancouver. They want to have a bigger presence in Canada because they've only got the Blue Jays. They want to have that bigger presence. Now, out of those locations, Vegas is getting a relocation team in the Athletics at some point. We don't know when, but that's the plan. They are going to move to Vegas when the new ballpark is built, if it gets built. Otherwise, they're stuck in Sacramento. Portland, however, it has been widely reported, has had meetings over the potential of expansion. Very similar to what's happening in the NHL, with many locations having meetings with Gary Bettman in the league in the NHL. Portland has been quite an open secret that Portland has ownership groups are very interested in bringing Major League Baseball to Portland. Charlotte, Nashville are interesting because that part of the US, there isn't a lot of baseball teams in that part of the Deep South in regards to professional baseball, whereas other sports have already got into those markets. Montreal, they have been there before, but we know what happened with the Expos following the 94-95 player strike. It sort of accelerated the Expos being relocated to Washington, D.C., and a lot of Canadian baseball fans do not want to support the Blue Jays because of the rivalry between Quebec and Ontario and the rivalry between Montreal and Toronto. The Blue Jays, just a lot of fans in Canada don't want to support the Blue Jays. And they want to obviously increase that presence north of the border because the NHL has 7 teams. Major League Soccer has more teams in Canada than Major League Baseball. The NBA obviously has the Raptors and has been to Vancouver before. So they feel like they're on the back burner a little bit and they want to increase their presence north of the border. There's a lot of fans of baseball and Major League Baseball in particular north of the border. They want to look at locations outside Vancouver, outside of Toronto. So Vancouver is another location they are keen to look at, and they want to get in these markets before other sports do, or other sports really solidify their presence. So they're very, very mindful of the fact that Montreal, Vancouver are markets in the other major leagues, and they do really well in regards to TV viewership, commercial, and other revenues, merchandise, and they have they sell a lot of tickets. Major League Baseball wants to get into those markets and compete in those markets. So he's been very, very keen on those locations as potential expansion. Now, I want to discuss the games played in London as part of the Global Series. They first went in 2019, and at the time I there was mixed reviews on how that initial game in London went down. Included a variety of things from the fan experience to broadcasting to accessibility to the visibility to the promotion. And again, I've done videos on the 2019 London series that took place before COVID. Obviously, the lockdown in 2020, they don't come. 2021, again, they don't come. 2022, they don't return. However, 2023, they finally come back to London after a 4-year hiatus. And again, the reviews of the 2023 games are on the channel, as are the 2024 games on the channel. Now, initially, they were going to go to France this year. Those plans have had to be scrapped. But they don't plan to return to London until 2026. And what the plan was, 2025 go to Paris for 2 games, 2026 go to London for 2 games, 2027 go back to Paris for 2 games, and in 2028 return to London. So past 2026, we're not sure if they're going to do London every year like the NFL, or if they're going to rotate and find another European city to play baseball in, because they want to have 2 cities in Europe. The initial plan was Paris. Now Paris has pulled out. There's been concerns over the viability of having the games in Paris. So that's and the London games are mixed. I think the reviews are mixed on how the games in London have gone so far. And I've covered all the games that have been played in London so far, all 6 of them. But we're not going to have a game in London this year. So how does that help grow baseball in the UK and in Europe? The fact that they're not going to return to Europe until 2026, and then not again until potentially 2028, unless they can find a location in 2027 or come to an agreement with London just to go every year like the NFL. Also, because they've been so behind the curveball in regards to taking games to Europe, the NFL has made a massive success of the London games, now expanding to Germany as well. They take 4 games a year to London and be it Munich, Berlin or Frankfurt, rotating around Germany. Massive success. They've expanded it from 1 game to 4. The NHL regularly takes games to Europe, different cities every season, and also outside of Europe, but they're really doing really well in Europe. The NBA goes to Europe. So Major League Baseball is behind its rivals in regards of taking games, not overseas, but to Europe and the European market, where there are a lot of fans. There's no doubt on that. There are fans here. So that's something to look to in the future about how they grow that part of the Global Series. There's no doubt the Global Series for Major League Baseball has been successful, but how successful have they been in London and in Europe? You decide. So there we go. That's a quick look at Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred, his time in charge. As I say, his time with Major League Baseball predates even me. I was born in 89. He started his first time with them in 87 when he was brought in as an outside negotiator for the league during the CBA negotiations, and in 94-95. He was a lawyer by trade before he actually got employed by Major League Baseball on a full-time basis in 1998. So he's been involved with the league for a very long time. When he retires in 2029, it'll be 42 years since his first involvement with Major League Baseball. So he's been around the league for a very, very long time. I think if you look at his time as commissioner, the first half he's in charge, his first, say 5-6 years, he is widely praised. As time goes on, fans, players, media, sponsors, various different groups have become more critical of his time as commissioner. But his early years, he was widely praised for rule changes, his open-minded nature on as I say, expansion. He's very keen on growing the sport in the US and in Canada. Obviously, organising and getting the games played in London, you could say that's a positive. But it's the time it took to get there, because when he was first appointed commissioner, they were meant to go in 2017 and 2018, and they didn't, which I think potentially hurt the league a little bit. They eventually get the first games played in 2019, but it's the length of time between 2019 and 2023 to come again. Did that damage the growth of Major League Baseball in the UK and Europe? Potentially. The issues with Paris, again. But I would say his time as commissioner has been mixed. There's been some highs, as I say, but also the Astros scandal onwards since 2020, the last 4.5 years, 5 years, haven't been plain sailing. So there we go. That's a quick look at Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred. Place your thoughts on the commissioner in the comments section below. It's been very interesting doing this video. It's a bit of a longer video than normal. I really appreciate it if you get to this part in the video, because it's very, very long, and I try to keep it as short as possible. But from me for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you are really, really keen, memberships are available. But from me for now, it is goodbye. I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.